So I am going to call the meeting to order. And I would like to say good morning, and I'll introduce myself. I'm Adele Imrie, the chair of the TCHC Board's Building, Investment, Finance and Audit Committee. And I want to welcome everyone to the public session of the committee's meeting. As you're aware, because of COVID, we are holding this committee meeting virtually. I would like to acknowledge that the land that each of us is on as we hold this virtual meeting is traditional territory of many of the nations, including the Mississaugas, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, the Inuit and Métis peoples. And we also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. As I mentioned, this is a virtual meeting, and none of the committee members are in the same room as we are practicing physical distancing. For the public session, several items have been brought forward to the BIFAC for information. They include several contractor awards from IT, facilities management, and operations in support of our ongoing commitment to provide safe and healthy communities for TCHC tenants, updates on work underway at Allenbury Gardens in Don Somerville, and the 2021 Corporate Insurance Renewal Program, and an update on Tenants First. I would like to reiterate the board's support for TCHC frontline staff who are in our buildings, offices, and communities across the city, working under challenging conditions to provide essential services and needed supports to tenants, as well as our employees who continue to work from home to keep the business running. Toronto Community Housing is doing its part to support the city's effort to protect public health and limit the spread of COVID-19. And on behalf of the board, I would like to thank everybody at the company for stepping up during these extraordinary times. We thank you for all your efforts and for living our values of putting tenants first. It's essential. So in light of COVID and that this is a virtual meeting, we will be voting. I would like a show of hands. If you have questions or comments, you can either address them to the secretary or just raise your hand. I want to remind everyone that members of the public wanting to make deputations today, we didn't receive any requests for oral deputations, but we do that were circulated to the committee members and will be posted at the end of this meeting. So I think if we can move on to item 2, the approval of the agenda and the review of the order of the agenda. As far as the consent agenda, can I ask if there are any items that the members would like to pull for discussion? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Brian, can I have a seconder? Nick, thank you. All in favor? Perfect. We are going to have, well, I think I'll move on to the change in order. I think item number 9 is our insurance presentation, and just for convenience for the members of Marsh and HESC as they participated in our confidential meeting, I would like to move that item up to the first on the agenda, just so that we don't take up too much of their day. So I'm hoping that that will be okay. But before we vote on that, I'm going to ask if there are any conflicts of interest to any that the committee may have as they sit on our agenda today. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the agenda as amended for item number 9. Can I have a seconder? I can see you. Thank you. All in favor? Thanks. Okay. so that taken care of. I am going to item number 3, which is the business or the public meeting minutes and the action items. Are there any questions or comments regarding item number 3 from the committee? Okay, hearing none, I will ask that for a motion to approve or to receive, sorry, the action items. Nick, seconder. Brian? All in favor? Perfect. Okay, so we will move on to item number 4. And I will turn this over to...
Sorry, Madam Chair, did you want to deal with item number 9 before we deal with item number 4?
Sorry. I'm sorry, I asked for that. Sorry. Yes, we will move on to item number 9, which is our insurance program. So I will turn that over to Darren and Anita.
And I'm going to invite Howie Wong and his team and Lynn from HSC and Lynn Irwin and her team from Marsh to take us through a presentation that they have prepared for us in relation to this matter. If you give me a second, Howie, I'm just going to get the presentation up for us. Can everybody see the presentation on the call?
Full screen.
I'm going to.
Yes.
Okay, let me just get it full screen. Better?
Good.
Howie?
Thanks, Sarah. I'm going to pass over to Lynn. She was going to present on this deck. Lynn?
Okay.
You just went blank.
Lynn, is Lynn on the call?
Dara, I don't want to delay the board anymore, so I'm happy to lead off until Lynn joins.
Sure. Yeah, Lynn doesn't appear to be on the call at present.
Okay.
Sorry, let me get it full screen again.
Thank you.
Okay, better?
That's great.
Hello?
So Lynn, is that you?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I'm having some technical issues, so I just dialed in.
Okay.
Okay.
Over to you, Lynn. Thank you.
All right. So if everyone has the presentation, wanted to give a bit of a market update. And what we wanted to indicate is that for the last years, the insurers have been wanting to go back to what is called the technical rate, where they are using their actuaries to really price the program. And this is just business in general. And as a result of that, compounded with the recent pandemic, now what we've got is a market that's very volatile. We have the pleasure of accessing the global insurance marketplace. We have 75% of the business placed in London, and then we have domestic markets. So we do have a great spread of risk in terms of how we place the business. In terms of what is happening in the marketplace, rates are escalating. The last couple of years, we have seen increases. There are certain classes of business, real estate being one, healthcare being another, where a number of insurers are exiting certain businesses. You will have likely heard back in the spring, the strata, the condos in BC, where increases were going up by 40% and higher. What's happening also is the insurers are looking for reducing their limits. They're also looking at account performance, and then also now looking to introduce some type of exclusion around pandemic. We are still negotiating the renewals right now, so we don't have final outline of what's going to happen there. So in the public sector right now, rates go up between 10 to 20%. In real estate, they're going up from anything from 10 to 40%, and a lot of them are restricting the kind of limits they're putting up. So that's just giving you an overview of what is happening in the marketplace, and we will be expecting some kind of increase. We're negotiating very hard. HSC's been at the table, working with the underwriters, showing what the risk mitigation, the work that we are doing. So all around, while the performance of the program has been well, we are still subjected to what's happening globally. Also recently, with what's happening now with the fires in California, we had the floods in Alberta, hailstorm, all those factors which are now big catastrophic losses get factored in when rates are being determined. While it may not affect specifically our program, we are part of that bigger group. So from on the next slide, the impact of COVID, insurers have been reporting claims. There's a lot of discussion right now in terms of what that will look like going forward. There are a couple cases right now, both in the U.S. and in out east in Ontario and also Nova Scotia, where there is some lawsuits that are going forward all around what's going to happen with this whole pandemic, and particularly in the residential and senior care, and how will coverage be impacted. There's advocacy, obviously, at the provincial level as well. So everything is quite in flux as it stands. However, there has been a forecast that the pandemic will cost globally the marketplace about $100 billion. That remains to be seen and be, again, very fluid. The HSC program specifically, again, we're in negotiations. We are trying to advocate to try to keep any kind of limitation to its minimum when it comes to COVID-19 and the pandemic. Also from again, a liability perspective, we're seeing rates on public sector municipalities book going up between 20 and 25%, and real estate anything from 10 to 15, and in some cases deductibles are going up by 25 to 40%. So if we go to the last slide on number 6, in terms of outlook and what we expect, we are in the midst of finalizing everything as we stand. We believe that the property will likely be in the probably 18 to 20% range of an increase. We are looking liability. We believe that we will be maybe around 7%, if not a bit lower. We are negotiating around the pandemic communicable exclusion, and that again is still up in the air. But we think overall it'll be roughly 15 to 20%. The factors that go into the negotiations and also in price setting is the value of the claims trust fund, which is right now going to be roughly $16 million going into renewal. They looked at the property values. Also, TCHC has been looking at their values. They've been increasing their values roughly about 2%. And then we look obviously at deductibles and then the pandemic. So all those factors go into what the price and how the price will be determined. So, it could be argued that, if we haven't had any losses, why should we pay extra? We always give the example of auto insurance, your personal auto. If you've never had a claim, why does your rates go up every year? So we are part of, like I said, a global cycle. We have been in a hard market in the last couple of years, and it remains to be seen what will happen once we come out of this global pandemic. We will have all pricing finalized and remitted for September 25th, which is a target timeline. Any questions?
Does anyone Marsh or for Howie at HSC? Okay. So hearing none, I'd like to say thank you very much. Could I have a motion to receive this report? And we will actually approve for recommendation to the board once we get the premiums later in the month. And I guess, Dara, will we receive this at our October board meeting or October BIFAC meeting?
So it's going to be a function of when we get those numbers from HSC and Marsh as to where we stand in terms of the negotiative process. For now, we're simply asking the committee to refer this matter to the board without a recommendation, and I've got a motion prepared in that regard. As the committee is aware, we've got a meeting scheduled for September 25th. We also have a meeting scheduled for October, within one of those timelines, based on the information that we receive back from HSC and Marsh, we'll get this to the board for approval once the numbers are in hand.
Okay. Could I have a motion to recommend this to the board, or to move this to the board without recommendation? Brian, Nick, seconder, all in favor? Okay, so I would like to thank Marsh and HSC for attending our meeting. We appreciate it.
Our
Thank you.
pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move back to item number 4, which is the facility management reports. I'll turn it over to Alan, the VP of Facility Management, and I think he has a deck that he would like to present to us.
I do. Thank you, Adele.
Just pulling it up, Alan.
Dara?
So the one question that we have for the committee, actually, maybe before I pull up the deck, I'll ask. Alan has a deck that addresses all of the various matters in the facility that are the facilities management reports. We can deal with them individually, and if the committee wants to drop out of the presentation for each item and vote on it individually, we can facilitate that. Alternatively, if the committee wants to hear the whole presentation and then have a single motion through which it would adopt all of the recommendations in those facilities management presentations, we can accommodate that as well.
So do committee members have specific questions on specific items? Would you prefer Alan to take a break between items so that you can ask your questions? Okay.
So why don't we...
Hannah? Sorry?
I didn't quite understand what the suggestion was. Sorry. So
we have a number of items, A through, what is it? A through L.
L.
And what Alan is asking, or Dara's asking, is Alan has a presentation that covers all of the items, which can deal with them individually, and that we ask our questions on each one separately, or would you like to bundle them all together and have Alan go through the presentation in its entirety and then ask questions at the end?
And just to clarify, it's really not about the questions as much as it's about the vote. And certainly I recognize the committee members are likely to have questions on each of these items. The question that I had was, do you want to vote on each item individually, or do you want to have a single vote at the end of all of the items through which the committee deals with all of the various recommendations? That's really the guidance I'm looking for. We can accommodate whichever one you prefer.
Okay, I would prefer that we hear the questions, because if there are issues with any of the items, we may decide at the end that we would like to deal with them individually, but without knowing what the questions are, I'm not comfortable just saying, yes, we're going to vote on these as a basket. So I think I'm more concerned about, would we like Alan to stop with each item and let us ask our questions, or would we like him to go through his whole deck and then deal with the individual items at the end?
I suggest that he goes through the presentation. We're able to ask questions on each item.
Okay.
I'm going to pull the presentation up.
Yep.
Sarah, thank you, Adele, and through the chair, thank you for the opportunity to review these reports and awards with you. We have 2 reports for information, 1 contribution agreement to review, a lease renewal, 4 contract awards, 3 change orders, and 1 update on our electrical PM review. So as decided, I'll provide a high-level summary for each of the items, and I'll pause after each one and answer what questions you may have. So the first one is item 4A, which is on page 65, Capital Project Management 2019 Status Update. Slide, please. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update as requested in the August 13th, 2019 BIFAC meeting on the capital construction awards that were approved by BIFAC in 2019. Also in this report, we've taken the opportunity to provide details on how we manage construction at TCHC, the processes and procedures we have in place to help vet and control costs and budget changes. So we completed the review of all capital projects, capital project awards that were approved by BIFAC. These are all multi-year projects, of which they're all on track for completion. For the majority of the projects, any of the change orders that were present were well within the industry average, which is 10 to 15%. We also took the opportunity to review all of our 2019 change orders on all capital projects that were undertaken, and are happy to confirm that TCHC average for change orders is at 7.7%, again, which is well below the industry average for construction work in existing residential buildings at 10 to 15%.
Does anyone have any questions on?
Adele, I do. So, Alan, how are we keeping up with our FCI? Are we on track with our 10-year capital plan? And in the future, can we have just a table showing that that we are, where we plan to be and where we actually are?
Absolutely, and yes, we are on track with the FCI for 10-year capital plan. It's actually looking a little bit better than what we had done before, but absolutely I can bring back an update on showing you what we had and where we are and where we're looking forward.
Because I believe like these last year and this year, like this was like the worst, if my memory serves me right, and then from now we're supposed to start going down, correct?
That's correct, with our goal being to get to the 10%, and we will do that based on what we're seeing currently.
Okay.
And just with regard to timing, because Alan didn't address the timing, we complete the FCI review at the end of each year, Councillor Bailao. So we will provide that. That would probably be a late first quarter, early second quarter presentation to BIFAC, because that's when we'll have that information.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Are there other questions on 4A? So, Alan, the only thing I wanted to say was I think this is a good report, because at BIFAC we only see the significant change orders. So I think it's important for us to see all of the change orders that are being dealt with over the projects. I was wondering, is the change order for demand renovations and the move in, move out, is that included in this report? The ones that are on this agenda for today?
So the demand is different. That's in a different bucket than the capital, so it would not be reflected in this. Move outs is part of the capital projects. So
that is reflected in this report?
Well, that one won't be, because we're looking at it for
it hasn't been approved.
2020. Okay. Yeah, and they're not necessarily a change order to work. This is a change order to the amount that we're approved to do for work. So it will be included generally in the scope at the time. So it isn't actually a true change order in terms of the construction change order, if that makes sense. Let me try to explain it better. The change orders that you see at BIFAC are when we've awarded a contractor work, a scope of work, and then we changed the scope of work during the course of the project. For the move-outs, what we're asking for is approval for an upset limit of what we can award to contractors, but the scope of work is determined at the beginning of the project, and therefore it's not necessarily going to be a change order because we know the amount of work at the time the project is started.
Okay, I think I
Hopefully
understand.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So do we want to? Dara, can you
Move
share
on
the
to
screen
item-
again? Thank you.
And this is the update on commercial parking and revenue, which is on page 81. So the purpose of this report is to provide you with an update on the progress of implementing and tracking new revenue generating opportunities for commercial parking. We did have an increase in our commercial parking revenue over the past 3 years. We did provide an update. We were asked about 3 individual parking garages at 200 Wellesley, 3735 Dundas, and 245 Dunn. With 200 Wellesley, there is a lot of work going on at that building between TCHC and the city, so we're not able to rent that. For 3735 Dundas, the rental of that parking was conditional upon the interested party receiving an approval through the city for an application that they had made. That application was not approved, so they were no longer interested in the parking. And then 245 Dunn, the leasing of those spots was postponed due to construction. We've also provided information regarding a hearing to the local planning appeal tribunal regarding the city's harmonized zoning bylaw. That took place on January the 20th, 2020. There was no decision. If the provision prohibiting visitor parking fees is upheld at the tribunal, this will require us to comply, as with any other landlord meeting, that we couldn't charge visitors to park in our visitor parking. So that could have an impact, and we'll certainly be monitoring that. Lots that are managed by the Toronto Parking Authority on behalf of TCHC that were put in place prior to the effective date of the bylaw, May 9th, 2013, they'll likely be grandparented, meaning they wouldn't be, we'd still be able to charge.
On that last point, I do believe that the decision from LPAT has come down, and that the amendments to the harmonized zoning bylaw, the appeal to those amendments was successful at LPAT, meaning that those provisions of the bylaw won't be enforced against us, so that we'll be in a position to continue to, at least for the time being, charge for parking in the manner that we do.
Are there any questions for Alan or Dara on 4B? Okay, hearing none. Alan, can I ask you to move on to C?
Thank you. Move on to item 4C, which is on page 86. This is an execution of an amendment to a contribution agreement with the City of Toronto and construction funding and contribution agreement with Dixon Hall Incorporated for repair work that they're going to complete at 502 to 508 Parliament Street. So I'll start out by confirming that these properties are currently owned by TCHC, and this is why the money is being moved to TCHC for then to go to Dixon Hall. The intent is that the properties will be transferred to Dixon Hall, but at this time they still are with TCHC. So that's why TCHC has been directed to enter into an agreement, city funding agreements with Section 37 funding of $6 million that has been authorized for Dixon Hall to use to improve and repair these buildings. The repairs are being administered by Dixon Hall, and as noted, it is the intention that the properties will be transferred to Dixon Hall. TCHC will, of course, exercise oversight over the work and will distribute the funds to Dixon Hall as the work progresses.
So are there any questions for Alan on 4C? Alan, can I just ask, it says that we're not at risk for any overages. Could you tell me who is at risk if costs go over 6 million?
That would be Dixon Hall.
Okay, but we're still the owner?
Correct, at this time. It's anticipated that they would be transferred to Dixon Hall prior to this. You know, it is a lot of work that's being done. It's anticipated that they would be transferred to Dixon Hall prior to the completion of the work, but worst case scenario is we'd have improved properties that would still be in our portfolio.
Yeah, my concern is it goes over $6 million, so we have a partially complete improved property, not, or we have liens on a property that we own.
We would definitely monitor the construction, and if there is any concerns, then we'd certainly bring that forward. But we will be we'll be monitoring the construction, and we won't be releasing funds, obviously, until we have all of the proper documentation in place in order to release the funds for the construction. And we'll review the schedule and have regular updates with them, just as we would manage any construction project. It's just not us managing the contract.
Okay. Okay, it's just hard to if they're holding the risk, it's hard to manage it with them, but okay. Are there any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, Adele. I just want to thank staff because this is, you know, Housing Secretariat, the local council has allocated some Section 37 funds as well. And so there's been lots of conversations, and the feedback that we're getting is that TCHC has been extremely helpful. There's a number of units that will come online, and given the situation of the city, it's very reassuring to hear that everybody's working really close together to get these units online and being able to have people living in it as soon as possible. So I just want to thank everybody because the feedback has been really good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And Councillor Bailão, on behalf of TCHC, thank you for that recognition.
Alan, could we move on to 4D?
Sure. Item 4D, which is on page 89 of your package, the execution of a lease agreement with the City of Toronto for the operation of a children's playground at 6 Henry Lane. So TCHC has a playground on city land, and we need to renew the lease. Looking to execute a lease agreement with the city for a term of 50 years less a day at nil rent for the land adjacent to the 6 Henry Lane. Background is we inherited this land, or this lease, during amalgamation in 1999. We've continued to occupy the subject land. In 2011, it was improved with a playground through Section 37 funding. And we need to enter, and then to permit the construction and ongoing operation of the playground, TCHC and the city entered into a license agreement on May the 18th, 2017. The license extension and amending agreement has expired on May the 22nd of this year, and so that's what we need to extend. What questions do you have?
Alan, it's Brian. Is there a reason for this to be in the TCHC purview as presumably a public playground, not just for tenants?
It is adjacent to the TCHC land, and the Section 37 money came to TCHC to build that playground. I believe that's why it would be required.
So are we responsible then for ongoing repair and maintenance of the playground?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it would form part of our, we inspect our playgrounds annually, and this playground is
Okay.
Sorry, I had internet issues, so I was gone for a couple of minutes. Alan, do you anticipate, I know that there's an environmental being done at phase 1. Are you anticipating that there's going to be any issues with that?
no.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Alan on 4D? Okay. Thanks, Alan. We'll move on to 4E.
We're getting there. Item 4E on page 92. It's a contract award for a plumbing sanitary replacement at buildings within Moss Park. So the sanitary horizontal and vertical risers at these buildings on Shooter are leaking and in need of repair. Scope of work is to deliver the plumbing sanitary drainage repairs. Obviously, it's not good when you have sanitary drains that are leaking, so we need to get them replaced to maintain the quality of housing for our tenants, reduce floods, reduce any leaks. The work was procured through a competitive bid process, and the bid was within. What questions do you have?
Are there any questions for Alan on 4E? Okay, hearing none, Alan, I'll ask you to move on to 4F.
Okay, thank you. 4F, which is on page 96, is a change order for the garage restoration project at 675 Kennedy Road. A change order is recommended for the updates to phase 3, which is the scope of work. We've included some pictures below, which hopefully will give you an idea of what we're dealing with. You know, as you can see, we do need to do additional concrete repair work for the garage slab. We've also got stairwells and a new drainage system. This work was identified while on site as a result of unforeseen site conditions. And I don't want to say it was completely unforeseen because we did anticipate and therefore used unit pricing in the original bid that there would be some additional work. It's just at the time, until you actually get in there and start tearing it apart, you can't really know the full extent, and that's what a lot of this change order is covering. The other piece is that the project was designed over 3 years ago, and 3 years has been a little bit of time passed, and the concrete has continued to deteriorate. So the change order is covering this work that will be needed to maintain the structural integrity of the parking garage, obviously the overall safety of the building, and ensuring that we meet all building codes.
So are there any questions for Alan on 4F? Brian?
It may not be you, Alan, who knows this. It may be Fiona or one of her staff, but is the parking garage utilization, is there a return on doing this work, or is it strictly a safety issue?
So this project is a safety issue, provides tenant parking, and it also holds up the building. The structure is under
That's probably the most important one. Yeah.
So I would say that, given the revenue of the whole building sits on this parking garage, Brian, it's probably a
good point.
Good thing to do.
Do you have other questions or comments, Brian?
No, that was just it.
Okay. Okay. So Alan, could I ask you to move on to 4G, the change order?
Yes, absolutely. On page 100, this is to allow additional spend for our general repairs under the Demand General Repair Program. This is the program, it's not a capital program, but it's the Demand General Repairs, in which we go in and do repairs in tenant units. So the change order is recommended based on the increased costs that we're seeing. for one, we're seeing increased costs in the amount of work that we're doing. So I don't want to say that we're seeing contractors charge more because this is unit pricing, but what we're seeing is that we're doing more work in buildings or in tenants' units, and we're also seeing an increased number of work orders, and we also have the contract managed West developments, which are now becoming direct managed. So that's all included in what this ask is for. And that basically, you know, is what we're looking for, is the approval to spend additional funds with these demand general repairs. And, you know, clearly this program ensures that tenants have well-maintained units.
Are there any questions? Anna?
Yeah. So where is this money coming from? So when we did our budget, we submitted it to the city asking for the extra 160 million so we could do the 10-year capital plan. Like, what is the impact that this increase in this line item is going to have both on our capital and on our budget overall? Where is this money coming from? Do we have space in our budget? Were we already budgeted for an increase?
Yeah.
Alan,
Okay.
I'll help out if I can. So this is funded from our operating budget, and these are small demand repairs in tenants' units. And the fact that we're doing small repairs before things get bigger and more expensive is actually helping the capital program.
But do we have space is there enough space in our operating budget to have this increase? I mean, what kind of pressure are we creating on our operating budget? I was just trying to identify where this money was coming from. And if there's a pressure that...
We'll be building this into our 2021 operating budget. We'll be building that budget within the 251 million subsidy that we get from the city. It'll be part of our 2021 operating budget.
And we've got budget to cover this in 2020 as well, Anna.
So you feel confident that within our current operating budget, we can approve this increase in this spending, that it will not affect our capital at all, and it will not affect our operating budget overall or ask of the city?
It's a limited amount too, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yes. And in fact, it actually helps, as I just want to reinforce what Sheila mentioned, it actually helps our capital plan because it fixes things before they deteriorate to such a degree that you need a major capital repair program.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just trying to identify where we were going to get the money.
Yep.
Yeah. Good question.
Okay, are there other questions for Alan for G?
All right, let's go.
Okay.
On the 4H then?
I might have one more question. Sorry,
Sure. Go ahead, Anna.
I just need to find the page because I just wrote a page. There's a paragraph. Oh God, I have way too many things open. There's a paragraph that I could not understand as I was reviewing the agenda.
Okay. Can I ask a question while you're looking?
Yes, please.
Okay, Alan, can you just speak to the process, how we control the demand for these requests and the review process for the work done?
Absolutely. So the requests can come in through client care, like a tenant calling in or going to their superintendent, or it may be something that's noted, for example, when a staff member is in a tenant unit, and these are generally repairs in a tenant's unit. So a work order is open for the scope of work. We have unit pricing, which dictates we've already got a predetermined price. So the site would be responsible to review to ensure that the work is necessary. Then it comes in, a work order is opened, the unit pricing is applied, the work is then dispatched to the contractor that has that particular area within the city. And then the work is completed using the unit pricing. And once the work is complete, then the superintendent at the building is responsible to ensure that the work has been satisfactorily completed. So they would go check it out, the tenant, if it's available in the unit, confirm that the work is done. Once they confirm that the work is done, then the invoice and matched to the PO. The invoice is not greater than what was on the purchase order, and if we have that three-way match, then it's approved and it's paid and marked complete.
Okay, so the unit price for work is fixed for the term of the contract, this 3-year contract? Okay, because there was a reference to prices going up. So I that confused me.
Yeah, it's not the price, it's the actual amount of work that's gone up. So over the course we've seen, so there's two pieces. There's one, an increase in the number of work orders, so more work is being requested by tenants or requested to be done in tenant units. I shouldn't say it's necessarily coming from tenants because it could be coming from multiple sources. And then we're doing more work with a particular work order. So more work is being done in the units and we're getting more work orders. And that's what's driving, as well as the addition of the contract managed.
Okay, I just want to make sure there's good control. Sorry, Anna, were you able to find the reference?
Yes. So you talked about that this amount, there's an allowance for the 24 developments in OUW, and that these will be transitioned into direct management. What are these 24 developments in OUW?
These are ones that were former contract managed developments in the West that have now been moved into direct managed. So they were former Dell sites.
And in that contract, they were responsible for the on-demand work. Is that it?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, so let's move on to 4H.
Thank you. Item 4H on page 104, that's a change order to allow for additional spending for the move out and unit turn program. So two pieces with this. One, again, we are having the contract managed units in the West are now direct managed. So these repairs will be handled by TCHC versus by a contract managed provider. And two, we're seeing an increase in the amount of work that we're doing in terms of when we do a unit turn. Both of those things are causing us to request an increase. This is a capital budget, and Councillor Bailão, we have made room for this in our capital plan using contingencies, and as you know, our capital plan can change throughout the year, so we definitely have made room within the $350 million capital plan for this, and we will plan for the increase in our 2021 capital program. So as we've said, the program has almost reached its full original approval, so we're looking for an increase, and it's due to the expanded scopes of work. And again, these are repairs that are done when a tenant moves out, getting the unit ready for the new tenant to move in.
Are there any questions for Alan on 4H? Okay, hearing none, Alan, can I ask you to move on to I?
Absolutely. Thank you. Item 4I on page 108. This is an award to set up a program roster for water efficiency programs. So this is over 5 years. So I know it looks like a large amount, but it is over 5 years. And this is to set up a roster so that we have contractors set up that can deliver water efficiency retrofits and upgrades to things such as toilets, aerators, shower heads, leaky bathtub faucets, and other malfunctioning equipment. Again, the overall purpose of this program is to reduce water consumption, contribute to reductions in our utility cost saving, and improve housing for our tenants. Just to be clear, we have been doing water efficiency upgrades in the past, and this is how we've determined the amount that we're looking at per year. This is just more formalizing it with getting a roster so that the work can be delivered more efficiently. And we monitor the water usage at buildings, and using the trends that we find, this will determine which buildings we target first to try to reduce our water use overall.
Are there questions for Alan on this item? Alan, the one question I had was, I just wanted to make sure again that the unit prices are fixed for the term, the 5-year term?
Yes.
Okay, and there was a reference to vendors will identify other opportunities for efficiencies in buildings.
Yes. So
and I was concerned that that was
yeah,
was a chance for them to just overcharge. So how are we controlling that?
Absolutely, great question. So yes, they do have the opportunity to identify other work. However, one, the pricing would be fixed, and then two, members of the staff that are administering the program would be responsible to ensure that this work is actually needed. And we can do that through either going out and inspecting it, and or we could contact the building staff to go and take a look as well. So there will be eyes on it. We definitely would not let a contractor just give us a scope of work and blindly say yes and issue a PO for that. We absolutely will make sure that that work is required and necessary before it's approved.
And that component, is that factored into the price that you've given us? I don't have it in front of me now, but.
The $4 million per year, there is some allowance built into that $4 million because this is up to. So we may not spend that much, but there is some contingency, I'll call it, in there in the event that other things are identified in the up to $4 million per year.
Okay. Sorry, Brian.
Just a question. Are we looking at buildings where we would be replacing all the, say, toilets for low flow, and looking at the cost benefit of that in terms of reduction of our water costs, so that it would pay the building or those changes in over a 2 to 5 year period if all the toilets were changed in one process, as opposed to doing it on a piecemeal basis?
Yes, absolutely. We do look at the whole building holistically, and we would look at toilets as can be a major one. We also look at the other items that are in a building as well in the washrooms. So we would not only look at toilets, we'd also look at aerators, shower heads, and also the bathtub faucets, because that can also be a major cause of water leaking as well. And it's actually emerging as one of the newer things that we're seeing just given the age. So you'll see like a bathtub faucet, if it continues to leak, obviously it wastes a lot of water. So we look at the entire building, and we look at all components of the building, and we'll go and do a whole building retrofit, as opposed to just replacing one toilet here and then one toilet there.
So you just don't look at the overall cost benefit?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, my internet connection is not great. It keeps coming in and out. So I'm sorry, Brian, was your question answered? And okay, so can we move on to 4J, or have we already done that?
No, we haven't yet. You're still.
Sorry, I don't know what the problem is.
Item 4J on page 112 is a contract award for envelope repairs and cladding and roofing at 2 Brahms. So we've identified that there are envelope issues at this building. Windows are showing signs of leaking. Roof membrane has been compromised and causing leaks on the top floor. So we want to complete this work. We're also taking the opportunity to make accessibility upgrades in the main entrance for improved access and quality of life for our tenants. And at the same time, while we're in the building and going into people's units to do their windows, we're also going to be installing in-suite control valves, which allows the tenants to adjust the unit temperature, which will help contribute to energy savings and improve tenant comfort. So this award done through a competitive process, and the award actually was a little bit below the estimate and definitely within the range.
Are there any questions for Alan on 4? Okay, hearing none, can we move on to 4K?
Thank you. 4K on page 116 is a direct award for annual grounds and snow clearing services for OUW, which are the buildings that were previously contract managed in the West, and they've now moved into direct managed. So we're asking for a direct award for 1 year only, and the purpose of this is so that we can award that we can keep the existing vendor who's doing the work previously for Dell to continue doing the work, especially through the winter months, so that we have uninterrupted services. By doing the direct award, this will ensure that we're maintaining a safe building, and it will also give TCHC the opportunity to go out and do a competitive bid process for this work, which we, as you would know because you've approved the awards for it, which is normally how we do our grounds and snow clearing services. We have reviewed the pricing that Dell was paying, and it is in line with what we've been paying for our direct managed, which was obtained through a competitive bid process. And we did also reach out to existing vendors that we have to see if they would be able to take over this work so that we wouldn't have to direct award it. However, they indicated that they did not have the staffing at this time in order to be able to take over this work. So we were not able to add it to our existing contracts. So that's the other reason that we need to direct award this. And then absolutely we will, upon approval of this, then we'll be going out to public tender to get this work publicly awarded. So this is sort of a stopgap measure to allow us to do an RFP process for this work.
Okay, so are there any questions for Alan on 4K?
Do we have any feedback from the tenants on whether that company provided satisfactory service?
So we've, I can't say that I've heard directly from the tenants, but our grounds crew team within my department has gone out and inspected it, and it was being done, to TCHC standards, and there were no concerns. We also didn't have any concerns raised in the previous winter from this, OU when it was contract managed, which would all lead to believe that the work has been done satisfactorily. This vendor also did do work for TCHC a number of years ago, I'm told, and it was satisfactory at that time. They just didn't bid on any of our direct managed work because they were engaged through the contract managed process.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on 4K? Alan, it seems like you've got a lot of information as it relates to a direct award. And I just ask when we come to the board that you be prepared with that information in case a board member raises the rationale for a direct award.
Absolutely.
And just to that point, I think that was well explained in terms of it's a transition and
Yes.
you thought alternate, et cetera, but this is the most appropriate course of action. To me, that was really well explained, and these are always highlighted direct awards, but that seemed very reasonable, the explanation.
Yes. And I think what you added today in your presentation is not necessarily covered in the written presentation that we got. But I do definitely agree with Nick. So I would like you to be prepared to address that at the board, and we may as well get out in front of it before the question is asked.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. All right. Last one item. I'm assuming we can move on.
Yes. Oh, sorry. 4L. Yes.
Nope,
last one.
Last one on page 120. So these are, this is updates to TCHC's electrical PM program. So we were asked to report to the Planning and Housing Committee on updates to the Electrical Preventive Maintenance Program in compliance with CSA Standards Association Z46318, which is the maintenance of electrical systems as requested at City Council on October the 3rd, 2019. So we've completed a review of our electrical PM program, and it does meet the intent of CSA Z463, and we are in compliance with a combination of strategy types identified in the standard. The CSA standard is not prescriptive, but more just sort of overarching. We did consult with the ESA, the Electrical Safety Authority, and CSA, the Canadian Standards Association, when we completed our review. I did want to confirm that we have the same standards for both contract managed and direct managed buildings. And during our review, while we are in compliance with CSA Z463, we do believe that it would be prudent for us to strengthen our electrical PM standards by adding additional activities. And then we've outlined that amount in the report. And we would include funding for that, or request funding for that additional work in our 2021 operating budget for preventive maintenance.
Are there any questions for Alan on 4L?
Just that there's that one typo. It should be 2019, not 2020 on A.
Oh.
It says October 3rd on page 120.
It was requested at the City Council meeting October 3rd last year, 2019.
Yeah, just in section A.
Thank you.
So are there any other questions on 4L? Okay, hearing none, can we go back to Dara's point? We've had a number of questions on the items, and I would like to thank Alan very much for his lengthy presentation, all the work that's gone into all of these items. So thank you very much. But are we comfortable approving this as a package, these recommendations, or would you like to go through them one by one? Are there any? We're satisfied with our answers? Okay. Okay, so could I ask for a motion to approve the recommendations that are presented to us in item number 4 from A to L? Brian, would you like to move that?
Sure, glad to.
Thank you. And Nick, I can see you. Can I ask you to second that?
As long as I don't have to read, as long as I don't have to read the whole resolution out.
Oh, do I have to read the whole thing? I was hoping that if I just identify. So all in favor? Thank you. And thank you again, Alan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so we will move on to item number 5. And sorry, who's presenting item number 5?
John Ankow is speaking to this, Adele.
And I can't see him. Is he?
Hi.
Oh, there he is.
Adele.
Thank you. Hi, John.
Hi.
So is there anything you would like to address as far as item number 5, or do you want me to just ask if there are any questions on the materials?
Just a short overview of the report. The purpose of the report we're advancing to BIFAC today is to seek approval for the change order to extend the current Sparkle contract, which is due to expire at the end of October. And some background to committee members, the Sparkle contract they do provide washers and dryers across our portfolio, and they also deliver maintenance services to those appliances, laundry appliances across the portfolio. And again, some background, we entered into an agreement with Sparkle back in 2005. We had renegotiated the contract in 2010. And at that point in time, the board approved receiving the $5 million from the initial investment we made with Sparkle and entering the contract. And moving forward, we do have an arrangement with Sparkle where we pay a fixed monthly fee, and we do absorb 90% of the revenue that's collected from all the laundry appliances across the portfolio. With that said, I'm happy to take any questions in relation to the report or the contract with Sparkle.
Do we have any questions for John?
Will we be going out to tender after this?
Yes, great question. So part of the change order, Brian, is just to, for the change order for the 6 months, is for us to issue the RFP that we're looking to do in the coming weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, and was there an issue, was it COVID that didn't allow us to get the RFP out in time?
Yeah, so I would say, Dell, that there was work started pre-COVID, and that the events of the last couple of months is just pulled resources away from issuing the RFP. But now with I would say with the new contract compliance department set up, we'll have the right eyes on this, Dell, to move it forward.
Okay. In one of our written deputations, there was a picture of a dryer that had, there was a fire. Are these commercial dryers and washers that we're using?
Yeah, we've posed a question back to the vendor. We do know that, in my experience with a fire and life safety hat, that the fires with the dryers do occur from time to time, primarily from, folks overloading the machinery, so that they're not paying as much or doing as much loads. But however, I have connected back with the COO of Sparkle. I've asked for an inventory of all of the appliances across the portfolio and whether any of those are not commercial grade.
So we don't have the answer to that, whether they're all commercial grade?
Not at the moment. I'm expecting the answer over the next couple of days.
Okay. Okay, and do they clean the because often it's just lint and stuff that accumulates, and I just wondered if they regularly maintain them and.
Yes, they do. So part of the contract is for them to maintain the machinery plus the duct from the machinery to the exhaust. So that's part of the service contract that we have with Sparkle.
Yeah, and so Adele, it's Kevin. Just to clarify, a couple of points. Well, John is correct that he is confirming that all are commercial grade. It is our understanding that all are commercial grade. I didn't want you to leave you with that. And secondly, with regard to your, while yes, Sparkle is responsible for maintaining the equipment, and when they'd go in to visit the equipment, they would check to see if there's lint on it. I think you can appreciate they're not going in on a daily basis to clean lint out after every use. And so I just didn't want to leave you with that impression.
No, and I'd like to think that the operators would check that, but anyway, are there any other questions for Don? Sorry, Brian.
Does that fall under the purview of one of the other on-site staff? Just, checking the...
They in conversation with staff, they do conduct regular rounds in their laundry rooms. So they do check if there's any obvious, backlog of lint or some sort of safety hazards. So that is captured in the daily check of site staff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve this 6-month contract award to Sparkle? Brian?
I'm glad to do it.
You're not prepared to?
No, I'm glad. I'm quite open to anybody else who wants to do it.
No, it's whoever I can see, and if you don't speak up, I've got to ask. Could I have a seconder? Nick, thank you. Or there's Amanda's hand. Thank you. All in favor? Okay. Thank you, John. And again, because this is sole source, even for 6 months, I just ask that you're prepared when you present this at the board. Thank you.
So, Adele, just so you understand, this will go to the board because it's over $5 million, because it's, including the changeover, takes just over $5 million.
Yes.
But that's the threshold. Not all items that are presented here go to the board. Okay.
No, but I understood that this one was.
Yeah, the last one we were speaking to doesn't. It's under the threshold.
Oh, so the snow removal doesn't?
No, because I think it was the snow removal we were speaking to, but the last one that you raised, it was, I think.
Perfect.
The dryer, the laundry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this goes there.
No, I think I was asking because Alan he covered the rationale for a sole source very well. And so I was asking that he be prepared, but if it's too small, then, and I realize that, yes, it is our approval. So.
Right. I just wanted to point that out just because there was some confusion on that. I wanted to make sure the directors understood that. Thank you.
So thank you. Okay, so we can move on to item number 6, which are the development reports, and I will turn this over to our Chief Development Officer.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I did have a couple of slides, but in the interest of time, I will just forego those slides on Allenbury. But the purpose of this report is that we're requesting an increase in the board authority for the rental buildings to $33 million, which is an increase of about $3.95 million since the board last approved this budget in 2017. The buildings, the rental buildings are now 98% tendered, so we feel that we're fairly close to being done and that we don't anticipate any more fluctuations in the cost to complete these rental buildings. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Looks like, did we lose Adele?
Looks like it.
I'm happy to sort of jump in and just ask a question while Adele sort of reconnects. Just in terms of the reasons for the revised budget, I was looking, the variance, the reasons for the revised budget were based on the variance of $4 million, whereas the apartment construction was like over $5 million. Is it possible to run the variance as it relates to the increase as it relates to that project? Because it's offset by a decrease in the other phase. So not totally clear on what's driving the overall upwards cost adjustment on the apartment construction.
Sure. I'm not. Tyler Baker, who's the senior director overseeing Allenbury, is also on the call. I don't know if he knows the breakdown relative to the $5 million increase.
Hi, this is Tyler. It's still relatively the same as the numbers that are provided there, or as the proportion that's represented there. So primarily, it's overall construction cost increases that we've seen in the market as a whole, and then the second one, the second major one, is for oversights from the consultant.
And on the and I know their name, the consultants are noted in terms of obviously for future reference as it relates to projects. Is it one particular consultant that's driving this, or is it a number of smaller mistakes that led to that overage?
Primarily one, yeah.
Are there any other questions for Vincent or Tyler?
I do have a question. Vince, as our Chief Development Officer, is there any recommendation? Because I've seen that you can make so that we don't run into, because we're running into this in every project now. Almost every meeting we're running into this. And I know that there's been substantial increases in construction costs in the industry, but I mean, are we not having enough contingency funds? Like, why are we running into these issues over and over and over and over again? And in some projects, it's already a few times that we've gone back.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been taking a look at this. You know, as you mentioned, the construction cost increases have been unprecedented in terms of how much costs have escalated. So that's one factor that we weren't able to account for. The other thing is if we build in larger contingencies than we currently have, we run the risk of overstating our capital spend as well. So we're trying to balance, you know, the amount that we're requesting through the board with what we anticipate the spend will be. As Tyler mentioned on this one, you know, $1 million in the consultant and omissions were something that we couldn't have foreseen ahead of time. I think when we speak to our construction cost consultants and our developer partners, we do anticipate a return to more regular kind of escalation of construction costs moving forward. So we don't anticipate these types of overages to occur as they have been. One of the other challenges that we are continuing to work with our colleagues in facilities management is that we design these buildings 3 or 4 years in advance of tender, but our TCHC design specifications continually update. So for example, our security camera spec updates. So we're constantly trying to implement newer standards in our buildings as they come up closer to when we're building them. So we could take a look at increasing our contingency to cover that, those potential cost increases.
I'm just, I mean, we have already a deficit in our development portfolio, right? So I think that if we're seeing that this is becoming a trend, I'm just wondering if the analysis has been done in all our projects currently underway and what we could expect. I think as a member, I'd like to start having a window into that. I mean, are we gonna start, when we compile everything, I think our deficit right now is 11 million, if I'm not mistaken, or?
So
no, there's like, no, sorry. I'm getting it.
There is a confidential item. It's in your package for that shows you the surplus deficit schedule. And currently, of the in-flight projects, we are in a surplus.
Yes, but have we reviewed all the in-flight projects with this lens that we're seeing often with the construction increase costs? Is this a risk that we're running that is very real? That's all I'm wondering. Like, are we going to see you coming back over and over and over again with more projects like this?
So I can't make the promise that we can completely cover off any kind of cost escalations in the future. We have been working, like I said, we have been working really closely with our developer partners and our cost consultants to get a better handle around what we anticipate future escalation to be, so that when we come to the board, you know, we're more confident in that number.
Are there any other questions? So, Vincent, can I just ask, this project, we did use up our contingency, and can you tell me the percentage contingency that you guys normally apply?
So typically we apply about a 5% contingency, between 5 and 10% contingency.
Okay, yeah, I would go closer to the 10, but and as you're going to tender, are your cost consultants updating you? I'm just surprised that we found out about the error in the consultant so late in the project, because you did say you're like 98% tendered, and I'm presuming that these items have been tendered.
Yes, my understanding is that they have been tendered.
Okay.
so yes, our cost consultants, we get a monthly report from them with each of the construction draws that outlines what the cost, what the costs are going to be.
Okay, because it just seems like Allenbury, it came to us just recently, and it's back again. So I'm surprised that they didn't anticipate this.
Well, so the last time we were here for Allenbury was in 2017. So it's been about 2.5 years now.
Okay.
So there has been some time that has lapsed.
I didn't realize it was that long, so I take back my question. But I would have thought that they would know prior to being 98% tendered that we were going to have an issue with our budget. And that's just a general comment.
Yeah.
So I would like you to
take that under advisement.
Yeah, I would like you to consider contingency amounts as well as working with your cost consultants so that we get a heads up, because it's very, and I don't know if we have options to make changes based on their cost estimates, but when it's very late in the project, that's very difficult to do. So the more heads up you have, you have more options.
Yeah, most of the 1 million came as a change order after it was tendered. So it was something that the cost consultant wouldn't have seen ahead of time.
Okay. Okay.
And Vincent, I think it is safe to say that that is a very unusual set of circumstances that a cost consultant would make that sort of an error.
Correct. I mean, I wouldn't consider it an error per se, because they wouldn't have had visibility to that issue until we discovered it.
So can I have a motion to approve and recommend to the Could I have a seconder? Anna, all in favor? Thank you. So 6A, Allenbury is taken care of. Vincent, can you move on to 6B, Don Somerville?
Sure.
And the revitalization update?
I'm just going to pull up this presentation. Can everyone see the presentation okay?
Yeah, great picture.
Okay. All right, so this is for the Don Somerville revitalization. So just as a recap, this is a site that's at Queen and Coxwell. It's a really truly integrated and mixed development. And as part of this development, we're asking for several things. The first one is to authorize the transfer of the future market lands, which are identified in blue. Pending satisfaction to me that all the tenants have been relocated, all the planning approvals are in place. And then the second part is to authorize transfer of lands at another site, which is at 2 Finn Avenue, to satisfy the city's requirement for a parkland dedication requirement. And then the third is to authorize an increase in spending authority to $740,000 for pre-development items related to this revitalization. I just wanted to highlight here, this is our community at Finn Park. The area in blue is the area that we will transfer to the city. This community is located adjacent to Finn Park, a public park, so it will be enlarging the existing park. And then there will also be a number of improvements that we will make in consultation with the local councillor and the community around improvements to the existing 2 Finn Avenue community. And then this is just a quick breakdown of of the increase in the pre-development spend that we are requesting. And there is a confidential attachment that breaks down these costs a little bit further. Right.
So are there any questions for Vincent?
Oh, and I will just highlight as well that this has already been approved by City Council, the transfer of land, pending the board's approval.
Okay. So are there questions for Vincent on John Somerville?
Sorry, just if you don't mind reminding, have we gone through the development budget for Don Somerville? Is that still we haven't done that yet, have we? Or have I'm trying to remember. I know we had a big chat. We had a big discussion about the plans, but have we gone through a budget approval process for that development or no?
So this development's a little bit different in that the board isn't necessarily going to approve an anchor business plan per se for this development, because the developer partner is committed to covering all the costs associated with the replacement of the existing units on site. And so there will be approval of a rental budget ahead of construction, but an overall budget approval, there won't be, the board won't actually approve an overall anchor business plan for this project.
Sorry, in terms of, you said a rental budget, what is that reference to?
So typically prior to the start of construction for our rental projects, we do bring forward a rental construction cost budget to the board for your information.
So, and I'm not, maybe I just don't recall all the approval processes, but given it's a redevelopment project and given there's going to be costs associated with that, we would not sort of approve an overall budget that we're allocating to this project, which would include these types of pre-development expenses as well?
So if you refer to that table, some of those costs are being reimbursed by our developer partners. So Context Developments is going to be reimbursing about $370,000 of the $840,000 pre-development expenses. Some of them are internal costs to TCHC, which we cannot pass off to the developer partner. And then in terms of the rest of the development costs, they're all going to be covered by our partner.
So Vincent, is the deal that he just has to produce the units no matter what at what cost? He just needs to replace the units, so it's totally on his side. Is that the deal we have with this development?
Yeah, so the units have been valued. There is an established kind of upper threshold around how much the building is going to cost to replace as part of this deal.
Vincent, in regards to the land issue, will that how will that be factored into it? The potential litigation.
Sure. So without kind of divulging too many details in the public session, it's being dealt with as a separate matter between TCHC and the adjacent landowner.
And does that have any impact on our relationship with the developer?
No, I wouldn't say it has any impact.
Maybe can discuss that a little further.
Yes, we are going back. And the environmental, the phase 1 environmental, we're not anticipating any issues with that on the parkland?
Sure. So Kelly Skeeth, who's the senior director overseeing this, maybe she has some more details around the environmental assessment at Finn. Oh, you're on mute, Kelly.
We're not hearing you.
Sorry, I unmuted the computer, not my phone. Our environmental consultant, Blumetric, has conducted a desktop analysis. They found that the parkland was built on fill, so they are proceeding to do some typical testing on site. And once we receive the testing, we'll get a better sense of the environmental standards of that particular site.
And is it
As part of-
TCHC? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Are we responsible for remediation if there are any issues in phase 2? That's where we end up?
Yes, we are. In order to convey land to the city, we have to follow the city's policy for land conveyance, which is pretty standard. So any costs of that remediation would be borne by us as the conveyor of the land.
Okay. And there aren't options as far as other land that could be conveyed? No.
We have explored other sites, but there aren't any other available sites in the councillor's ward.
Okay. Phase 1 is good. Are there any other questions for Vincent or Kelly? Could I have approve the report for Don Somerville? Nick, Brian as seconder, all in favor? Thank you. I think Anna had to leave. She has another meeting. Chair. So thank you very much, Vincent. Thank you, Kelly. We'll move on to item.
And I think Dara's going to speak to this item on behalf of Vincent and I, and we're here to answer questions.
So
Okay,
I can
thank you.
speak to the updated delegation of real estate transactions or real property transactions. What you'll see in your package at page 152 is the Secretary's certificate with respect to the existing delegated authority. And what you'll note is that the authorities that are delegated through that document are quite specific and identified in Section 1, Sub A, the granting of easement, rights of way, and transfers of land required by the City of Toronto, etc. And what we're finding is that we are developing a volume of other forms of agreement that impact real property, but we believe to be of sufficiently routine nature that is appropriate for the board through and BIFAC to delegate to staff the authority to sign those kinds of agreements. And specifically what we're talking about are limiting distance agreements, tieback agreements, crane swing agreements, permissions to enter, and party wall agreements. So those types of agreements cover things like an agreement that permits a property of an adjoining site to use a construction crane that will extend over our property, or alternatively to tie back into our property construction that is required to be supported on the adjoining property owner's site for compensation. Limiting distance agreements will provide a commitment that TCHC won't develop on its own property within a specific distance of the adjoining property owner, which may exceed the side or the setback amount. And permissions to enter and party wall agreements are what they sound like. Agreements that permit somebody to enter into our property to perform work on theirs, or to have an agreement that governs the construction and maintenance of a party wall, a wall between our property and that of an adjoining property owner. What you've got before you today is a recommendation that the committee and approve and recommend to the board, that the board approve the delegation of certain staff the authority to sign those agreements. And you've got an example of one agreement that's before you today, where we're asking the committee and the board to approve that execution of that agreement, because we haven't had the benefit of the delegated authority at this time.
So,
are there any?
Happy to answer any questions. No, I was just going to say happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Just so I'm clear, like reviewing the current delegation, I think that's attachment. It's in one of the attachments from 2007. It currently includes granting of easements, rights of way, transfer of lands, and minor granting of minor easements, etc. So if that's the case today, to me, these subsequent additions are minor to those in terms of materiality. So if that's the case, that makes sense to me.
Do we have
Thank
any
you for
other
that.
questions?
That wasn't really a question, I guess.
Thanks. No, agreed. And that's the approach that we took.
Okay. Any other questions from directors?
No comments? Okay. And I do agree with Nick. Seems much more efficient. So can I have a motion to approve the recommendation in the report? Nick, seconder. Amanda, all in favor? Thank you very much, Dara and Kevin. We'll move on to item number 8, which is the change order for the telecommunication infrastructure related services. And I'll turn this over to Louisa.
Thank you, Adele. Just also for your information, Tony Burnaby, who is TCHC's Director of Network and Infrastructure, is also on the call to answer any questions that you may have. In July, the Board of Directors referred this matter to BIFAC. I have outlined, provided additional information to the committee for consideration. As outlined, there are services within this agreement which can only be provided by Bell, and we are unable to go out to tender for those services. For data services to our data center, we contract with 2 providers, of which one is Bell, to ensure continuous uptime for our employees. If one service were to go down, we can revert to another provider. However, we have confirmed that we are receiving very favorable rates from Bell, but we do require 2 providers for redundancy. Where there are other providers that can deliver the same or similar services to TCHC, we have agreements in place with other providers, and we are not exclusive to Bell. We select the provider that can deliver the service at the specific location. As compared to our other providers, we have confirmed that our rates with Bell in this new agreement are very favorable. For a matter of information to the committee, TCHC will be participating in a future joint procurement with the city prior to the expiration of this agreement. Therefore, it is recommended that BIFAC approve and recommend to the board approval of this change order for up to $6.1 million for the extension of the current agreement with Bell until September 30th, 2025. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Or Tony?
Does anyone have any questions? Sorry. I think there was a reference made to an option, an in-house option to Centrix. And I was wondering when that was coming online.
So Centrix is an old service that is located at about 1,600 of our sites, and that is a service only provided by Bell. We are transitioning away from that service as we have established a new agreement with VoIP. So we will be moving away from that service through the next number of years.
Okay, so it's over a number of years. Not.
Yes.
It wasn't clear to me whether it was within this change order term.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question, please, Adele?
There was I think it's a VoIP solution. It said that when that's online, that it will eliminate the need for Centrix. And I was just trying to get a handle on the timing of that.
So I can ask Tony to give a more definitive timeline, but that will occur in 2020 and 2021.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's Tony. So the VoIP question, we have just started the project as of 3 weeks ago. We are in a discovery phase with the current vendor that we're using to provide VoIP to us. What the VoIP solution will do, it'll replace the Centrix portion of the users that are currently using Centrix that will go to VoIP. The majority of those lines that are still will be on Centrix once VoIP is established and in our environment will be moved to a 1FL solution, and that takes a long time. So the whole Centrix portfolio will disappear over a number of years. It does take a while to move a number of lines from one service to another that will still be in Bell, but at a much cheaper cost. So the Centrix portion was more to provide virtualized PBX, if you want to call it, for voicemail, for call forwarding, for any other phone type telephony service that users need, to which point there was no other service but to grant them that. So that will encompass and be replaced by VoIP, Adele. The remaining lines that will be under there will be replaced by a 1FL at a lot cheaper cost. So that is why it's going to take a number of years, because we've got a number of lines that just need to be replaced by a different service.
Okay, I wasn't clear by the comment whether change order. So that's why I was asking, but it sounds like it's not.
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Adele, I think you said within the context of this change order is a 5-year agreement. So Tony, those lines will be converted over within those 5 years. That we know.
Once the 5 years is complete, within the 5 years, that's correct.
Yeah.
Oh, so it is within the term of this change order?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and so can we contract out of certain parts of this agreement if we don't need Centrix, or am I not understanding?
So Adele, it's Tony again. So the Centrix services will move into probably the Megalink services that you see within that report, which is at a lot cheaper pricing to us from a TCH perspective. So you'll see probably the Centrix costs go away, but an increase in the Megalink services because of the move of the Centrix line into that bucket.
But Adele, I think your question was, and so I think I will answer it, and they correct me if I misstate it. Adele, I think the question that you're looking at is, are we committed to the Centrix line for a period of 5 years? And the answer is no. Similarly, no. in your personal use or small business use, if you're no longer using the line, the cost goes away. So that I think was the point that you were trying to get to.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Adele, I didn't understand, but we are not committed.
Clearly, I wasn't clear enough.
Sometimes,
or at least Kevin and I talk the same language or something. No one knows.
Sometimes, Adele, it's better to ask the non-techie.
Okay. Yeah, I am so sorry, Adele. So we are not obligated. Once those services transition over, we won't pay for those services. That was the answer that I. Thank you. Yeah. Are there any other? No, that's okay. Are there any other questions for Louisa or Tony on item number 8? Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the recommendation to the board? Change order? Amanda, could I have a seconder? Nick, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And Louisa, just when you bring it to the board, please make sure that you're addressing John's questions.
How do you know John's going to have questions? Too easy.
Just in case. And I will move to the last item on the agenda, number 10, which is an update on tenants first. And who is providing this update?
That's me, Lindsay.
Oh, there you are, Lindsay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
So I'll just give a really brief overview and then take any questions from the committee. So this is an update that some of you, if you were at TSC a couple of weeks ago, will have seen a very similar report. And this is coming as well to BIFAC at the request of the committee. This particular report at BIFAC includes an additional item, which is some detailed information about the vacancies within the scattered agency and uninhabited portfolios. And that's the confidential attachment that you will see. So if we need to discuss specifics around the vacancies and the reasons for those vacancies, I'd ask that we go in camera. But the rest of the report can be discussed in public.
Do we have any questions for Lindsay on this update? Okay, Lindsay, hearing none. I
Great.
have a motion to receive this report for information. Nick? Could I have a seconder? Brian? All in favor? Much, Lindsay.
Thank you.
So if there is no other business for the committee, could I have a motion to terminate the public session and go back to in camera? Nick, could I have a seconder? Amanda, all in favor? Motion carried. We'll terminate the public session of the BIFAC